Hey, what's up everyone? Demons Omega here, and welcome to my first video. Today I want to talk about what does it mean to be human? What makes you human? Is it your soul? Is it your brain? Is it your body? Now, there are generally two schools of thought on the subject. One of them is that your soul is what makes you you, and the other one being your brain is what makes you you. Now, I recently played a game called SOMA, which is what gave me the idea to make this video and bring up this question, because the game introduces this concept. The title has a period after every letter, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't stand for an acronym. I looked up the word SOMA, and it means body in Greek, and it also refers to some type of juice that's derived from a plant that is stated to grant you immortality if you were to drink it. So, brief background about the game. It takes place in the year 2104. There was an event that basically wipes humanity off the face of the planet. There are still humans around, but now they are in mechanical bodies. So they're basically robots. But they're still humans. And they want to save what's left of humanity and get it off of Earth so that it lasts for years and years and years to come, right? Thousands of years. So they attempt to create something called an ark, which is supposed to be comparable to Noah's Ark as the hope for humanity. Now, throughout the game, you're trying to find the ark, get the ark, make sure it works, and get it up to space. The engineers who are working on the ark before all events where the game starts, they were conducting experiments, and some of these engineers started to go crazy since they were the ones experimenting on themselves. A lot of their colleagues had no idea why these individuals started going crazy and killing themselves. But the reason they were killing themselves is because after they conducted these experiments, they realized that they weren't transferring their mind. They weren't transferring their consciousness, right? They were actually just copying their data and creating another version of themselves. And not a doppelganger, an exact replica. How would you react if there were two of you on Earth? You can only speculate, but it would be shocking to find out there's someone up to this point has the same exact memories, same exact life, everything exactly the same. It would be shocking. The main character is Simon, and throughout the game starts off with him as a human early on, before all the events of this happened, in the year like 2014 or something like that, 2015. Then fast forward, you wake up as Simon 1, which we're going to constitute as the copied version of Simon, right? So Simon 1, you wake up as him, and you go through the game, you find out at some point that you're a robot, and basically everybody else is robots in the whole plot of the story. Midway in the game, you have to transfer bodies so that the plot can continue forward, because you have to do some stuff that goes further into the ocean, or goes deeper into the ocean. Simon is under the assumption that when he transfers bodies, that he's transferring his consciousness, but really he's just copying himself over, so he's still going to be himself. Catherine tries to explain it to him. She drops hints, but he doesn't quite understand it. The creators did a really good job at transitioning the point of view during this first copying, because the point of view wakes up from Simon 2's point of view after you leave Simon 1. So it seemed like it was a transfer of consciousness as opposed to a straight copy. But you gotta remember, it copies everything up to that point. And then when Simon 2 wakes up, he hears Simon 1 mutter something, which scares him. And he's like, what is that? Catherine basically tells him it's just a remnant of the body just reacting to not having anything in it anymore. But she knows that Simon 1 is still alive, but Simon 2 is not understanding it. Anyways, it weaves in some ethical dilemmas throughout the game. You have the option to drain Simon 1's battery or leave him there alive. It didn't take me long. I decided to drain his battery. The reason I decided to drain his battery was because if I were in his shoes, I wouldn't want to be at the bottom of the ocean by myself in a facility that has monsters crawling around it. Just wouldn't be fun. And you would be by yourself, yeah. You can make the argument that it is unethical because it's a living human being that didn't consent to dying. You kind of made that decision for him, so it was involuntary. But you can make the case, the argument that it is ethical because this individual, you're subjecting this individual to inhumane conditions because you already know that they're going to be down there alone. You don't know how long power is going to last. There are monsters crawling around in that facility. And you got to remember, they're humans. Even though they're in robotic bodies, they are humans. They feel like we feel. They feel angry. They feel lonely. They feel sad. They feel happy. They feel anxious. They feel fear. So I wouldn't want to subject them to that. So I decided to pull the plug. But it's all up to personal opinion, and there are people who decide not to pull the plug, so that's left up to you. So now fast forward to the end of the game. After Simon completes his journey, collects the Ark, puts it on a rocket, sends it copies over the data and sends it up to space. The point of view of Simon shows you the data being fully uploaded, and it says complete, or like 100% or something like that. And then he's excited. He's like, oh yes, he's ecstatic. He's just going crazy. And then the point of view stays on Simon too, and the helmet comes off his head, and he realizes that he's still at the bottom of the ocean. Now, he's pissed, he's scared, a bunch of emotions just running through him. And he's telling Catherine, like, what's going on? I said it fully uploaded. And Catherine's like, I tried to explain it to you. Those were copies. Copies of us are now in space on the Ark. And he was not getting it. He was livid. Not only because he was shafted. And it sucks. So now he gets angry. From my understanding, he breaks the machine that Catherine is hooked up to, which leaves him now alone in the dark at the bottom of the sea. It's just terrible conditions for him. Then the game ends. And then afterwards, it starts up as Simon 3, which is the version that was copied onto Ark. Simon 3 is ecstatic. He thinks his consciousness was just transferred over, and he's Simon 2. But that's not the case. So he has no idea that Simon 2 is still at the bottom of the ocean. So he's running around, he goes and finds Catherine. Catherine 2, on the other hand, knows that Catherine 1 is still at the bottom of the ocean. So it was pretty weird to find that out. I thought it was a good game overall. I thought it dragged on at some points, but the concepts that it makes you think about, it's pretty good. I would recommend it. So 3 sources that I want to talk about that I thought kind of related a little bit to the game was The Starlight Crystal by Christopher Pike. The book related more, in my opinion, to free will and destiny. That's what I got out of it. That you're destined to do something. You don't really have a lot of free will. But it does introduce some concepts, one of them being cloning. And they take the side of your brain is what makes you you. Because this individual, the main character, she ends up cloning herself, and her clone is a different individual. So even though she's exactly this person, she can live a totally separate life. Another one's the movie The Prestige. So a character played by Hugh Jackman, he constantly clones himself. He's a magician. He constantly clones himself to perform tricks, and his clones die in his place to perform his tricks. So his clones are him, but not him at the same time. They can live totally separate lives. So this movie also takes the side that your brain is what makes you you. And SOMA also takes that stance because Catherine 1, the Catherine that you meet in the beginning of the game, you're able to pull out her CPU or whatever the chip's called. You're able to pull it out and put it into the Omni tool, and she's still that Catherine. But when you copy the data over, that's when it becomes Catherine version 2. Okay, so that chip, which I'm gonna call the CPU, it's essentially her brain. And then finally, Rick and Morty. So that's one of my favorite shows. I love that show. And one of the episodes that I just watched again today was Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. So when Rick transfers his consciousness to Tiny Rick, it's the Rick that we know. It's Rick. So it's not Rick, but a different version of Rick. It's the exact Rick, the old Rick. It's a little confusing. But he actually transfers his consciousness, which you can also refer to as your soul, right? So Rick and Morty, the show, takes that stance based on what I've seen watching it. And it's shown in many other episodes, but even in this episode, at the end of the show, Rick actually goes into his lab, kills all the clones in the vats, and realistically, those clones are just empty vessels. They're just shells that he can transfer his consciousness into. But you also see in other episodes, so I think it was episode 1 of the newest season, he is constantly transferring his consciousness, his soul, into other clones from other Ricks in other universes. But it's the same Rick from the universe that we know. So they take the side that your soul, your consciousness is what makes you you. Because it doesn't matter if there's a brain in that individual. You don't need to transfer the current Rick's brain to another Rick or another entity or another creature to make that creature Rick. He can just transfer his consciousness or his soul. Well, thank you for watching the video. Hope you learned something new. Hope it was interesting. Leave recommendations in the comments. Leave comments as well. I'll get back to you.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause.